often in life that the simple thing to do is actually the best thing to do. So that's on the positive side. Now, the other, as you correctly point out, is avoiding mistakes. And two of the biggest mistakes are, one, that you go through a year like 2022 when it looks like the sky is falling, and you go through a year like 2007 when we had the world financial crisis, and it looked like the whole world was going to, the whole financial world was going to come to an end. And you look at a period now back into the 1980s when the stock market dropped 20% in one day, and you then sell out. That's what will kill this simple long-run investment program, because it's precisely at those times when you're putting the money in that you're getting the best returns. You're getting more than the 10% returns. So that's, I would say, cardinal sin number one. And sin number two is, gee, my neighbor just said that he made $100,000 when Bitcoin went from 50,000 over to 67,000. I need to sell all my stocks and get into Bitcoin. And it doesn't have to be Bitcoin. It could be any other thing that's a hot and very sexy type of investment that is the talk of the internet. Those are the kinds of errors that will ruin an investment program, and that will be the death knell for somebody saving for retirement. So I would say those are the two big errors, and what the simple right thing to do is. And it's not easy. I mean, look, it requires discipline to keep saving. It requires discipline to say that you need to keep buying when everybody is nervous and everybody is saying things are very, very tough. But as probably one of the best investors we know, Warren Buffett says, it's exactly the time you ought to be buying when people are very, very nervous. And I'm not suggesting you try to time the market. Nobody can do that. But regular investing will assure you that you will be buying at those times that are the most propitious times to make investing successful, namely the times when everyone is scared to death.
When we started out by saying how wonderful the market return is, and those average market returns, like you said, if you're regularly investing, those include holding through the bad periods as well as enjoying the good periods. And I think it's really interesting. You emphasize the discipline and the simplicity and just letting compound interest do its thing. And why the reason I find that so interesting is someone with as decorated of a background as yours, and most people that you speak to who really know their stuff understand that investing, unlike all other endeavors in the world, doesn't necessarily require you to work as hard as possible to get the best result. Because most things that we do, we're taught at a very young age to work harder in order to achieve more. But like you said, with investing, oftentimes the best thing is to keep it simple and remain incredibly disciplined so that you can let that compound interest work. The other thing that seems, based on what you're talking about, that can sometimes conflict with our intuition is people get all riled up, and good investing and remaining disciplined sometimes requires us to ignore what are very instinctual reactions. Good investing requires us to ignore all of our natural human instincts to stay the course, because our ancient ancestors, if they heard a rustle in the bushes, They didn't calculate the probability of it being a lion versus the wind. They just took off and ran. But investing, you do have to sit there and stay patient. I think that's really wonderful. Some examples that you've given there. And I think it also helps to just be familiar with history in general. There's some lessons learned within history and bubbles that I really liked the idea, you pointing out that most bubbles in the book, you say that they're mostly associated with some new technology or with some new business opportunity. I was hoping maybe you could share an example or two of how this has played out throughout history.
Well, the classic bubble actually happened in staid Holland, where a botanist from the Middle East had brought to Holland the tulip bulb. And the Dutch planted tulips, and they were really quite beautiful. And with the soil that existed in the Netherlands, it was just a sign that if you wanted beauty in your backyard, plant some tulips. And what happened then was that some of the bulbs got affected with a virus that then, instead of having the tulip be just one color, there were variated stripes in the tulip. And these were actually called bazaars. And people were so fascinated with it that the price of a tulip bulb that had been affected with this virus sold for a little more than other tulip bulbs. And then people sort of started to think, well, gee whiz, if I had bought these bulbs before they went up to sell for more than a regular tulip bulb, I could have made a lot of money. And so some merchants decided, I'm going to buy an inventory of these things and hold them, hoping that they might increase in price a bit more. And it sounds absolutely incredible, but what happened was that the price of tulip bulbs started rising, first slowly, then a little more quickly. And when people went to the local bar and talked about this, you found that, gee, your neighbor was getting rich, and there's nothing that makes you feel worse than, gee, what a schlunk I am. My neighbor just bought these tulip bulbs and made a killing. I better get in myself. And so you had this enormous, it sounds unbelievable, but we had this enormous bubble in tulip bulbs where the price of a single bulb rose to an amount that was the equivalent of a nobleman's castle. And like all bubbles, at some point, people started to say, hey, wait a minute, why am I paying these crazy prices for a tulip bulb? The bubble popped and tulip bulbs then became no more expensive than a simple onion. So the idea when people talk about bubbles, they talk about it being tulip time, and it refers to this craze in Holland in the 1700s. And there have been so many more. And the tulip bulb wasn't really a new technology, but in 1995 to 2000, we had what has been called the dot-com bubble. That this was really where the internet was taking off. It was going to change our entire lives, which it indeed did. But internet stocks doubled and then doubled again and then doubled again until the beginning of 2000 when there was a crash and even companies, major companies like Microsoft and Amazon actually lost more than 95% of their value because they had been bid up to such astronomical prices. And we keep seeing this again and again. We saw it with Bitcoin that got bid up to over $67,000. Bitcoin is today selling in the $16,000 range. We saw it with so-called meme stocks, where particularly over the internet, people thought that GameStop, a company that was not profitable, that was selling games through stores at a time when the distribution of games was almost entirely done online. But that didn't prevent people from having GameStop double and then double again and double again until it popped. So these things have happened throughout history. They've happened throughout history because there's nothing that bothers people more than seeing their neighbors get rich on something and thinking that, boy, I want to do this as well. And again, this goes back to the lessons that people like you are wonderfully talking about, that avoiding those kinds of mistakes that can kill an investment program are just so important to keep in mind. And this is why history, a knowledge of history, is so very important. Avoiding bubbles is a major, major lesson. And I spent a lot of time on them in my book because two ideas of investing: one, doing the simple thing that works, and secondly, avoiding the things that we know not only don't work, but that can lead to disaster.